The dang clown world. I'm on my second live today. So I'm at work, seeing acupuncture patients, right? And I put needles in a guy. So what I do basically all day, I do the treatment. Some treatments are more labor intensive than others, but basically, at some point, I get the needles in, and then I get a break. It's like I say, I gotta let the patient cook. I gotta let the energy move. So I work, I get downtime, I work, I get downtime. That's what my schedule's like. So in the last half hour, I see this news headline, and high altitude object shot down by U.S. Department of Defense over Alaskan waters. So off the coast of Alaska, within territorial waters of the United States of America, right? So this one's interesting here. Now, when the Chinese spy balloon happened off the coast of South Carolina, they told us right off the bat what their version of the story was about that spy balloon. It was very, it had the illusion of transparency. They had a story very quickly, and they stuck to it. So now we got this Alaska thing within the last hour. So apparently, some high altitude object, 40,000 feet, the size of a small car, in the words of the Pentagon spokesman. They're being extremely vague. They're not saying anything. So instead of coming right out, with the story like the Chinese spy balloon, now they're not saying anything. It's an opportunity for, Mr. Dementia Joe Biden to look like a hero, and the president authorized the Pentagon to shoot it down. And it's like, yeah, okay. Um, so why I'm making this video is just the vagary is so damned interesting. So when you go back to the Chinese spy balloon, the other part of that is that it's been known that for like over 20 years, the Chinese have just been fucking floating these things all over the world. Um, but within the last week, a week or two, it's been sensationalized. It's like, oh, Chinese violating air sovereignty with spy balloons, and it's like, well, yeah, but an interesting factoid is that the United States intelligence services and Department of Defense have been violating pretty much the whole world's airspace with spy planes since the 50s. So for what, 65 years, they've been violating airspace. And now we have some fucking rinky-dink Chinese thunderhead balloon. We have a couple of them. It's a big deal now. American hypocrisy. Human beings are hypocrites, especially when human beings are narcissists and psychopaths. They're hypocritical. They can do whatever they want to people. You can't do anything to them. It's a crime of the century if you do the same thing to them that they do to other people. So that's an interesting part of this whole thing. You'll look up the U2 spy plane. U2 spy plane is where the band from Ireland, the rock band, got their name. The U2. Look up the U2 spy plane. The SR-71 Blackbird, that was a far superior spy plane. Can't remember the precursor to the Blackbird, but it was pretty cool. Same kind of idea. More in the neighborhood of like the flying wing technology, built by escaped Nazis and German scientists after the war. So yeah, that's interesting with this whole spy balloon thing. It's like, well, the United States have been violating people's airspace forever, but that's okay. It's just like, oh, we can put weapons all and troops all over Russia's borders. That's okay, but if they did that to us, we'd be pissing and shitting our pants and crying to our mummies. But the American people, for the most part, a bunch of outraged cowards. watching television, um, and getting angry and trying to put curses on people they've never met. So anyway, let's get back to this Alaska shoot down. Um, Different possibilities with this. So this could be another spy balloon thing. They could, this could be the beginning stages of pushing the whole alien agenda. There is an alien agenda. They've been running these ancient alien shows forever, and they've been just pushing this narrative that ancient people were fucking morons. Ancient people before Christianity and before universities were morons. They couldn't do anything. Aliens must have built everything and just taught us everything. Um, so there's that. Then you have these, crackpot far left socialist economists like this Paul Krugman, who back in 2009, after the market crash, news anchors asked him, well, how are we going to bring the economy back? And he said, well, if there was a threat from outside this world and we could build new technologies and weapons, we'd have a whole new economy. And if the threat turned out to be fake or false, then, oh well, just lies. We have a new economy. I think that's why we've had so many TV shows, novels, movies, science fiction, pushing this whole alien agenda, alien invasion thing, because they want a fake one eventually to bail the economy out. Because the economy's broken, the money system, and the whole world's broken. And they take you to war when it really breaks down. So yeah, we could be at the beginning stages of this, and even with the UFO hearings in Congress, you had these treasonous, quizzling politicians. What the hell's the guy's name? It's not LeCloud. Republican from Illinois. Darren. Can't remember to save my life. But he was asking members of this panel, from CIA and Department of Defense, when they're talking about the U.S. Navy's alleged sightings of UFOs, this congressman said, is there a legal framework to prosecute non-governmental people who talk about UFOs or say that they've sighted them? So they have at least some interest in extending the Patriot Act and the censorship of it into the realm of ETs and extraterrestrials. So, and this is an old idea, like the whole Project Bluebeam thing is to project an alien invasion in the sky and fake it. And I do think that is a plausible technology. You spray the atmosphere with metallic particulate, you might be able to do something like that. So, pretty interesting. Don't fall for it. And you got these clowns trying to popularize the ET UFO threat, like the Tom DeLonge, the singer from Blink 182, and then they have that meat puppet with the fat face. What's his name? Lou Elizondo, who's like former military, former CIA, who was the head of some intelligence community UFO task force. Don't believe any of these fuckers. If you're listening to me, you're probably not going to believe it, but if you just stumbled upon me, don't believe this shit. So that's a possibility here. Who knows? Now, another thing, too, is if you saw Vladimir Putin's Stalingrad speech. So, quick background. Stalingrad was basically the turning point of World War II. Now, the thing is with World War II, Americans, particularly like baby boomer males, they like to act like heroes because their parents' generation were World War II veterans. Even ones whose parents weren't even in the war, they like to act like heroes because people their parents' age were World War II veterans. So they like to act like that, the U.S. entered the war and saved the world from, the Nazi Empire and the Japanese Empire. And a lot of media, magazines, books, movies, television, documentaries that are all crap push this idea that America saved the world. We didn't. We did about 5% of the heavy lifting in the whole war. 90% of that war took place on the Eastern Front between the Soviet Union and Nazi Germany. So, oh God, I'm losing my train of thought. I seriously just lost it. What the fuck? Um, so yeah, but anyway, we have this whole very false. I don't even want to call it a mythology because mythology is not false. We just have these fake narratives that America. Oh, I know what I was gonna say. So we have these fake stories that America saved the world during World War II. It was really the Soviet Union. If anyone saved the world, it was the Soviet Union because they fought 90% of the war. The Soviet Union lost at least 25 million people in the war. America lost 400,000. And in a big battle, the Soviet Union would lose 2 million people just on their side. So in a big battle, they would lose 5 times the people that the United States lost in the whole war. So yeah, the United States didn't fucking save anybody. Didn't save the world in World War II. It's nonsense. So anyway, Stalingrad. Stalingrad was the battle that turned it all back. Stalingrad is north of the Caucasus. It's on the banks of the Volga River that empties into the Caspian Sea. Now, down at that end of the Volga, in the Caucasus, you're getting towards Azerbaijan. Azerbaijan, capital of Baku, massive oil fields, Caspian Sea oil fields. That's what Nazi Germany wanted to capture. They needed oil. So they thrusted far into Russia to try to capture these oil fields in the Caucasus and Azerbaijan. Well, they failed. Stalingrad was the last major city in their path when they're trying to grab these oil fields. So the Russian and Soviet peoples went through horrendous things. That battle was what, a year long. Tremendous loss of life. 2 million Soviets, killed in this just meat grinder of a battle. So within the last week, getting to the point, within the last week, Vladimir Putin gave a speech, which he does every year, commemorating the Soviet victory at Stalingrad. They call World War II the Great Patriotic War, and rightfully so, because the Nazis who had hijacked Germany and were manipulating Germany, they had at least half the population of the Soviet Union slated for liquidation. So they were going to just exterminate them so they could give the land to German settlers. So these people had their backs against the wall, and they turned the war around at Stalingrad. So in this Stalingrad speech in this last week, Putin was talking about, the NATO aggression, and the NATO puppet of the United States government, which is a puppet of investment banks, hedge funds, run predominantly by WASPs, white Anglo-Saxon Protestant types in America and Britain. And these WASPs, you have to understand, especially their leaders, their aristocrats. And the world has always been run by aristocrats, always will be. Their aristocrats are Indian givers. They make promises and they break them. Indian giving was in America as the United States was expanding westward. They would make treaties with the native tribes. Every time they would take land, they would have a fight, they'd have a war, and then they would make a treaty, and they'd say, we will not expand west anymore or take any more territory. They always broke the treaties. And the aristocrats running the United States from the get-go have been WASPs, white Anglo-Saxon Protestants. So these types of people have been puppet mastering NATO, and they've been breaking the treaty that they would not expand NATO eastward. Belgrade Agreement, 1995. Bill Clinton made this promise. It's been broken. So Putin was addressing this whole thing, and he said, if NATO keeps pushing eastward, there are going to be consequences, and it won't be armored vehicles clashing. Now, everybody jumps to the conclusion that he's talking about nuclear weapons. Well, I think only Americans are assholes enough to use nuclear weapons. Particularly, again, the WASPs, the white Anglo-Saxon Protestants, who control the deep state that puppeteers the government, the military, all that stuff. They're the assholes who would actually use nuclear weapons. I think, and who have used them in the past. Dropped 2 on Japan, and possibly some little tactical ones in Iraq and Afghanistan. But anyway, those are the assholes who use nuclear weapons. I think what Putin is talking about is a whole new generation of weapons that have existed for at least 20 years, but have not been widely known about in the public. So we're talking about scalar weapons, energy weapons. It's like when the Russian military back in 2010 or before, it was during the conflict in Georgia over in the Caucasus, north of Turkey. A 40-year-old Russian fighter bomber that had a special type of jamming pod on its wing shut down a U.S. destroyer that had to be towed into a port in the Black Sea. It just knocked out its electronics just by flying overhead. Then 3 Russian submarines triangulated, I think it was the USS Eisenhower, north of Scotland, way up in the North Atlantic. They basically, 3 submarines formed a triangle around this U.S. carrier, turned on an energy weapon and nearly crippled it. It had to basically limp into Scotland. So I think what Putin is talking about is, all the countries that the United States has been ganging up on and bullying for the last 75 years, since 1945, 77 years, they may just knock our grid out and just leave us to wallow in our chaos and fend for ourselves. I think that's more of what they're talking about. So who knows what the fuck with this Alaskan whatever. The vagary is weird. They knew real quick that the object on the Atlantic coast off of South Carolina was a Chinese spy balloon, but they're being all vague about this thing off of Alaska. So we'll see. Could be the rollout to this alien agenda, or it could just be another spy balloon. Who knows? But yeah, conceivably these spy balloons could have, some EMP technology that could really fuck our grid. And the Chinese do own, especially in the Midwest, like Minnesota, they own massive tracts of land that are basically like walled towns that outsiders aren't allowed into. So they could be up to all kinds of shit. We'll see. America's enemies, well, I shouldn't say America's enemies, the enemies of the United States have been watching and observing and learning for the last 25 years since the Cold War came to an end, as we've been, bullying third world countries and, in these pathetic wars, from Yugoslavia to Iraq to Afghanistan. So they know a lot about us and they know our vulnerabilities. So we'll see what happens, but they're definitely tired of our shit. Give people something to cry about, especially the outraged cowards watching TV news. Anyway, that's it. Talk to you later.